torturing you.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, we could do it another one. Just do what you got.
Yeah. Or, the blog post is actually, and the GitHub, there's readmes out there. If folks are interested, please read that, ask me questions, I can answer. That's too, that too we can do.
So can y'all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of the path I went down was looking for ways to figure out a baseline and measurements so that I can track improvements. I'm building a chatbot also, happens to be in healthcare. So I look at MLflow has some capabilities there, which I experimented with. It was pretty interesting. It looked like they were creating a question for each chunk that I would hand it. It was kind of complex and hard to use. And then I landed on RAGAS, has the capability to create questions, to generate questions. I don't have expertise in the medical field, so I can't verify that these questions are valid or not, but they seem quite valid, and I do have access to some experts to validate it. So the RAGAS way to generate questions is really quite simple. So you hand it your docs, and the test generator generates a test set of questions. What's interesting about it is that, so here are the questions, is that it creates a question, spits out the context that it used to create that question, and it's got question types, which I thought was kind of interesting. So multi-content, simple, multi-content, seems like there was a third or fourth, conditional. I thought that was pretty helpful, and I can't explain to you what the different types are and what they mean, but it seems some of it seems fairly obvious. So that's kind of where I started with it. Separate context. So I was pretty pleased with that. I think so right now I've got a fairly limited set of documents I'm using. Eventually I'll have a lot more, so I'll be able to generate more questions. So any questions on that before I move along?
Yeah, can you give the bigger picture? Why would anyone generate questions for evaluation? What happens? What's it used for?
So you can evaluate your RAGAS pipeline to see that it's actually behaving properly and answering questions consistently and appropriately. I'll actually, as I get into the evaluations, you'll see kind of more what I'm looking for. So basically, my process was to, for prompting and other of the parameters, I wanted to, before I started adjusting things, I wanted a baseline so I can see is it helping or hurting the result, right? So I did what do you call vibe testing or whatever it is, just kind of generate some questions that I made up and then see what the response was. And I started with that as a baseline, but now I want to be able to try different models, try different parameters and see, is it detrimental or is it helpful? Does that make sense?
Do you keep the questions static through each of those iterations?
Yes.
And
so so that's my test set basically.
But those are generated from the actual text that you use for the answers?
Yes.
So okay.
Yeah.
So you generate questions from the text, then you keep those questions static while changing some parameters.
That's right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right. That's
Is
right.
your success criteria that if a question Q was generated from document D, when asking the question, your answer should include stuff from document D? Is that
Yeah.
okay?
So again, I'll once I start to get to the evaluation, you'll see more of that.
Yeah.
I do have, and I think some of the questions you're asking are kind of some of the discomfort that I have too, which is, we're generating questions from the original content, and we're using, I don't know what model they're using to generate the questions. I think it was Chat GPT, but that's configurable. So yeah, I do have discomfort with some of this process, but I'm just kind of taking it on faith that these guys have done this work. Eventually I'll probably look deeper into that. For right now, I'm just looking to get something, build a framework basically. So then getting to the validate, basically, again, I'm using RAGAS to do the validations. So I'm getting the ground truths from that document that I created from generating the questions, because it generates both a question and then the ground truth.
Which is the answer. Is that what ground
Yes,
truth means?
that's
So
right.
Okay, so that's all synthetic data.
That's right. It's all synthetic. Eventually, I have access to some expertise that understand the medical conditions that I'm questioning or trying to create a chatbot for. I'm also getting the context along with similarity scores. So for the retrieval, so I can measure the retrieval. And then I'm calling, this is a validate function. I'll look at, yeah, here we go. So this gets into the RAGAS bit. So you're passing RAGAS a data set, which includes the questions, the answers, the context, and the ground truth, right? So you're measuring kind of two different sides to it. You're measuring the output, the generated text, but you're also measuring the context. How good did it retrieve the context that you wanted to add to the prompt, right?
Yeah.
You
So
have the,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So you just keep going. I'm with you.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things that I was experimenting with here is that you're able to give, so these are the evaluations. I've actually included in the comments what they mean. So you also have the ability to decide which LLM you're going to use to do these evaluations, right? So I played around with that a bit. So you can, use one model. So you have the ability to choose different models to do the evaluations from what generated the questions and the model that you use for the inferencing. So they have like a standard set of metrics that you can use. So I'm just putting all of them in there. I don't know I haven't quite evaluated the evaluations, if that's makes sense.
You're just getting you're getting the whole framework end to end up and running. Is what you're doing.
Exactly. So I'm just getting all in there to see what it all looks like. As I'm starting to go through this now, I'm starting to pay more attention to some than others. There's also this notion of aspects, which I don't quite understand yet what it means. But all of this is fairly modifiable. So, for example, one of the aspects, the company I'm working with, I'm consulting with a healthcare company. They're building, they want to build chatbots for underserved populations. So I want to create an evaluation of bias, right? And I had the ability to do that through RAGAS, which I think is pretty cool. So you can come up with different evaluations that you can use to baseline it, right? So what happened was,
One thing
sorry.
to note, just big picture for everybody, is that all of this evaluation, everything that's all the judgments being made and all the output is all LLM. It's all using large language models and just asking, GPT, did this use all the information? Did this use all the information to return context from the vector database? Or it's a prompt saying, did any of these facts in the answer not come from the context that came from the vector database? It's just a lot of different, it's sort of like best practices and prompt evaluation captured into a library, basically.
That's right. And yeah, so like one of my concerns is that clearly in healthcare, hallucinations is a concern, right? Because so in my prompting, I'm telling it, don't only use what's in the context to generate a response. And I want to make sure of that, right? So that's part of what these evaluations, some of them will do, right? So like precision and recall. I suppose everybody is familiar with those terms. It's in this context, it means pretty much the same thing.
Hey, we've got a question in the chat, which is, where you did content.split documents?
Yeah.
What is that content? What is that object? What's that from?
So that's something that I wrote.
So the content's not from some library, it's from your...
No, it's from
helper.
basically, yeah, so I'm basically loading sources from a website.
And what is content? What kind of object is it if you just printed it out? It would be, in your library?
Yeah, it's in my library.
Okay.
So basically it contains, I'm using it to parse the data, to do the chunking,
Okay.
so I abstract all that and I can change the content. So I'm loading from a file.
I get it. Rather than using like LangChain or Llama Index for doing your chunking or some other library, you just done it yourself.
No, it is using LangChain.
Oh,
to do the
right
chunking.
in front of my face. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, web-based loader. That's from LangChain, right?
So it's just all a wrapper around LangChain. Which
yeah, it's a wraparound it's abstracting all that, so I don't have to write a whole bunch of code every time.
Okay, cool.
So I'm loading because I'm using different content. I'm using web, YouTube.
Yeah.
I just want to give it a link and let it do its thing, right?
I got it. So I'm sorry, you were at the point of describing you had all of the, there you go.
Yeah, so what the problem I started to run into is I'm trying different parameters and finding I can't keep track of what I'm doing. So I started logging in MLflow.
So by the way, I have no idea what that aspect stuff is. Did anyone know what that is? That's a RAGAS thing, right?
It's a it's a RAGAS thing.
It's basically stuff you can compute right off the answer using the LLM as the knowledge base, kind of. So toxicity, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they have built in like things. And was that part of the hallucination stuff you were talking about too, or no? No, that's not. Okay. Toxicity. Okay.
Like something that you can generate right off the answer without looking at anything else.
Yeah, like is this being sarcastic?
Right.
Yeah.
The anti-sarcastic aspect
right.
or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sentiment, right? So that's sort of
yeah.
And they have some of those built into RAGAS, right? Is that the idea?
Yes, some of them are, I think. Yeah.
And then you can probably make your own. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I think actually I'm logging all of that. So yeah, so in my result, I'm logging all this. You can see the score. Let's see. Yeah, so these are the aspects.
True or false? Got it. Cool.
It's basically binary.
And do you know what those 5 aspects are? Or should you just iterating through all of them, all the built-in?
I'm just iterating lists. I haven't got to the point where I'm actually trying to figure out what it all means.
Yeah. And those are the scores for all of your.
These are the retrieval score, the similarity scores from the retrieval. Because I'm not quite satisfied with the K parameter. So in some cases you can see there's a range, and in other cases it's. Let me find one that's So here's one that's a bit.
Those are similarity between the question.
That's right. That's a similarity between the question and the result of the query. right?
So those chunks that are coming back from the vector Vegas, which are results of the query, those are low similarity scores.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, it should be closer to like 0.7.
That would be
it's not a confidence score. It's a semantic similarity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know, but I've worked a lot with semantic similarities, but usually higher. But I understand you're just, I was actually asking, do those look low to you too? So
Yeah, they look
there's
low
one
to
high.
me too.
There's one that's really high above that.
Yeah,
Okay.
some of them are like really, but my point is that some of them are really low in similarity, but I'm still, if I'm doing K, I'm using a K, I'm just taking whatever it gives me. It seems like it would make more sense to create some kind of threshold, right?
Yeah, right. There's always the question of the threshold, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I can't answer.
Yeah, that would be that to me
the,
would be.
Because you're gonna force hallucination by not having a decent threshold. But of course,
Exactly.
there's the question of if the question is short and the context is comparing what is long. I mean, Suji, maybe you can answer this. With modern embeddings, I mean, I remember with Expert and all this, you would get a lower score. Like it was better to have the same size text, but is that no longer so much the case?
Yeah,
Right?
that's what I noticed too. Either you do like question to question, that was like pre LLMs. You basically find similar questions and then return the associated answer. Or you do the hide approach, right, where you generate hypothetical answers for the question and then do similarities with that.
But I guess the point I was trying to make is that your knee or your curve for a threshold is going to be much lower than you'd expect, just because you're doing such short text to longer text.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are the similarities of the questions to the answers, or the answer
to the context, to the retrieval,
to the chunks.
Not to the ground truth. Not like the
no.
answer.
This has nothing to. Yeah, this is only retrieving the chunks from the database, from the vector database.
Yeah, the thing about this RAG evaluation is there's so many different freaking aspects to it, right? There's a bunch of them that are retrieval aspects. So you want to know, did this come back with a terrible answer because the retrieval was horrible, right?
Right.
Yeah, or is this answer hallucinating? So then you're comparing the answer to what was retrieved. And then there's also, of course, the main thing you would think, which is, did the answer actually answer the question? This is the intuition of what's happening here. So you could find out where things, is it the LLM that's screwing up? If so, do I need to change my LLM? Do I need to change my prompt and test again? Or is it the retrieval that's screwed up? That's the whole, I think that's most of it. But anyway.
It allows you to kind of decouple these things and independently make improvements, right? Because if you're just looking at the whole RAG pipeline without isolating the components, how do you know what knobs to turn, right?
Okay, so please continue.
Yeah. So so that's kind of mainly where I got to. My main thing right now is just let me log everything, and then when I start making changes, then I can have some metrics that I can measure against, right?
Yeah. And you're like, I just want to get started now. So you made up your own golden truth.
Yeah.
So go back up to that where it shows all the different inputs to the validate. So that validate function is a RAGAS. That's the main RAGAS.
This is the function.
No, the inputs. Yeah. All right.
This.
Yeah, there it is.
The data.
The data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the data you put into the library that then will get you back the results of those metrics. And the ground truth you use through data. I'm just summarizing a little bit here.
Yeah.
The ground truth, you generated that from your documents.
Yeah, that's
Could have been from your chunks, but in this case, your chunks and your documents are the same thing as you did chunk them. And you did that in lieu of having some medical professionals answer the questions. So you'd create a data set. You could create a data set. You also generated the questions too, which actually works well. So a lot of times what you would do if you got deeper into this is, you have all these generated questions, and then you have professionals quickly go through and maybe, answer them or validate which is the better answer. I don't know how you do it, but somehow you need to get to the golden truths
Yeah,
And
that's a requirement. I'm not going to go out with something like this from
yeah.
generator, synthetic data, right?
So the context of the retrieved chunks or retrieved document, okay, that's what the context is. And the answer is the answer that the LLM produced from your app. So Meredith, you had your chat going, and so this is going to you're going to use the API, your API, you would ask the question, right? And then you would get the context, and then it would, from the context, answer, the LLM will answer the question. So this is the answer that the LLM is producing here, answer. And then, so then the RAGAS metrics will compare that answer to the ground truth that your medical professionals have provided, something like that. Anyway.
I just shared a graphic on Slack. This is based on which RAGAS metric measures what, right? There was a question, so I thought this was.
Yeah, every time I look at their website, I found a different metric. They've been pretty busy. Like on their main page, they have 4 metrics, and then if you dig deeper, there are more. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, this is
helpful. Right?
This is really helpful. Thank you, Suji.
Yeah.
That diagram. It's hard to put that all together.
So any questions here? I'll show my ML flow charts, which has been super helpful.
Yeah.